Chapter 22, Choosing a Vendor. Finding a PACS vendor that fits an organization's needs is actually a very important step in the PACS implementation process. There are literally hundreds of systems out there to choose from. So how do you even go about the selection process? This chapter will lay out what steps to take and thoughts to consider when choosing. A business plan needs to be established before you even begin the process of choosing a vendor. This includes many factors and components. We'll start with that you need to assess the existing department and develop needs assessment for your organization. So a thorough needs assessment should include both an operational, so like a workflow, and a technical, like storage and network requirements, HIS and RIS interface analysis. Think of stakeholder requirements. The stakeholders would be those of the RADs, the techs, the RAD administrators, clinical specialists like surgeons, ER docs, family physicians, and also the IT department. Review the archival and viewing requirements of other departments since they're involved as well in the need for PACS. This includes OR, the OB department for viewing ultrasounds, and maybe the ER as well, just for some examples. You need to incorporate the ROI analysis into the business plan. So make sure you include the estimated costs for the initial as well as the ongoing expenses. And also don't forget the cost savings. You should survey your facility's infrastructure and the views of administration and the stakeholders. So this could include taking an inventory of what is already set in place as far as infrastructure and resources go, as well as seeing what administration and stakeholders think about getting a PACS and which vendors they would want to look at and for what reasons. It is important for them to be educated on the benefits of PACS. In your business plan, you need to take a look at available resources. This includes financial resources, so how do you expect to pay for this PACS? You need to take a look at your personnel resources. So do you have the appropriate staffing necessary for any new positions needed, like a PACS or a modality manager? And you need to take a look at available space for installation. This includes radiologist reading rooms. Do you need more workstations, and do you need to design an ergonomically efficient reading room? You need to take a look at the hardware and software requirements, software applications that need to be integrated, such as RIS, scheduling, dictation software, and HIS. Those all need to be looked at and make sure that there's a seamless integration. Within your business plan, you need to determine key objectives for the PACS implementation. This could be like expected productivity increases, expected savings on not having to use the film-based equipment anymore, and the expected amount of time that is required to convert the department from film-based to digital. You need to assemble a PACS team in your business plan. So who is accountable for the project? This should consist of people with the right background as well as people who will be affected by PACS implementation, such as radiologists, the techs, supervisors, IT staff, and your financial team. They will define the principal criteria they will use to evaluate the vendors, and this should be included in the RFP. You've heard me talk about the RFP a few times in previous lectures, but right now we will discuss the main components or the objectives of the request for a proposal. You need to include you need to provide the vendor with an overview of your enterprise. So we need to explain that to them and how your organization works. You need to provide a detailed description of the specifications with intent of including the vendor's response in the final contract. So let them know exactly what you're looking for. You need to obligate the vendor to deliver per the requirements that they specified. So whatever they say they're going to do, say maybe in the service agreement or the installation process, you need to hold them accountable for that. You should also solicit responses that facilitate comparison among vendors, particularly for the issues that you identified So when you explain like the overview of your enterprise, you want to make sure that the vendors are able to respond in a way that you can easily compare each vendor to one another. A well-written request for proposal includes the goals of the radiology department, so the time frame that you want to go digital in, the department and the enterprise productivity improvements. It includes the general information about the organization, so the number of sites, the patient population, the imaging volume at each site, and your growth and expansion plan. Operational information about the departments with access to PACS need to be included in an RFP. This includes your current workflow, so patient registration process, the exam scheduling process, how an exam is performed, the image interpretation by the radiologists, and as well as report generation. So the technical and hardware requirements of the organization should also be laid out in the RFP. We've discussed a lot of these already in detail, but read through the pages in your book of 354 to 358 to understand how they relate to being included in an RFP. The responses to requests for proposals can help the buyer decide what vendors to look into a little further and kind of narrow down their choices. Usually this means they're narrowing down to as few as 2 to 3 vendors. The responses are usually weighted in order of criteria of importance to the RFP. And each vendor is then scored based on their responses. So you need to set up a site visit. Site visits are an important step in selecting the vendor because the selection committee can receive feedback from those who have already implemented the vendor's PACS that your site is reviewing. The review committee gets to observe the system in action and gives them the ability to see how that customer likes the product or how they don't like the product. You want the selection committee to schedule these with the vendor, and you want to schedule each site visit for different vendors close to each other in as far as time goes. That way the memories of the selection committee are kept fresh and they can compare the different systems easily. Keep your selection committee to only the few key players. This could include clinicians with expertise in the field, like your IT manager, or your radiology manager, maybe a lead tech. This should be anywhere from 6 to 8 people maximum. On a site visit, it is always helpful and important for you to ask questions. This is one of the main ways that you will be able to solicit feedback from the customer. Sometimes they won't touch on things that are important to you, or maybe that something that is a main criteria in your selection process. So make sure that you ask those questions so you can get valuable feedback. So when reviewing RFP responses, you are going to come down to negotiating a contract and payment terms and budgeting. You don't necessarily have to have your selection narrowed down to one vendor in order to start this process. If 2 vendors are agreed upon and it is hard for the selection committee to choose between the 2, oftentimes the final decision comes down to negotiating the terms and the conditions of the contract. The vendor who can give the purchaser better terms and conditions will then win out. So in negotiating the contract, obviously price is a key point, as well as the options that the system includes, hardware, software upgrades that are included, as well as licensing for the software, and service contracts are big as well. For the payment terms and budgeting, this goes for the implementation process, for the maintenance of the system, for software licenses, for the interface customization fees, and for the loss of time and productivity occurrences that happen during downtimes.